I paid off my parents' $420,000 farm so they could finally retire. When I visited, my brother had changed the locks and said, "You're not welcome on family land." I nodded. Then I made one call. And 10 minutes later, he was the one being asked to leave. Hey, so before today's story, if you haven't subscribed yet, just know we're dropping a new one every single day, and it's not slowing down. Subscribe and stay locked in. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you for subscribing. Let's get into it. My mother called me on a Wednesday, not to talk, to warn me. She kept her voice low, the way she used to when my father was in one of his moods, and she didn't want him to overhear. "Don't come this weekend," she said. "Why?" "Your brother says it's his house now." I laughed. She didn't. "He changed the locks, sweetheart. All of them. Even the barn." I stopped laughing. I was standing in my kitchen holding a glass of water, and for about 3 seconds the room didn't feel real. Then it did, and the water tasted like metal. "Mom, my name is on the deed." She didn't say anything for a long time. I could hear her breathing, slow and careful, the way she breathed when she was choosing her words like someone choosing which wire to cut. "He knows that," she said. "He just doesn't care." I set the glass down, wiped my hand on my jeans, sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall for a full minute without blinking. Then I got up, walked to the hallway closet, and opened my filing cabinet. Second drawer, the one labeled family in black marker on a white tab. I pulled it open and looked at the stack of the papers inside. Bank transfers, mortgage documents, the satisfaction letter from the bank, the deed with my name printed in the same font as my father's. Everything was exactly where I left it, organized by date, clipped in order. I closed the drawer, not hard, just firm enough to hear the latch click. My brother thought he changed the locks on his house. He changed the locks on mine, and I had the paperwork to prove it. Every page, every dollar, every date. But before I tell you what I did next, you need to understand what that farm cost me. My parents bought the farm in 1991, 42 acres outside of Colton, a small town where everybody knew your truck before they knew your name. My father worked it his whole life. Soybeans, corn, a few cattle. It wasn't a big operation, but it was his. The land was his identity. When people said Whitfield, they meant the farm. Even when they meant the farm, they meant my father. The mortgage was $420,000. For a place like Colton, that was enormous. My parents managed it for decades, barely, scraping together payments every month, dipping into savings when the harvest was bad, borrowing from relatives when the savings ran out. By the time I was 23, they were 2 payments behind, and the bank had started sending letters with words like acceleration and foreclosure. My father didn't tell me. My mother did. Same low voice, same careful breathing. "We're going to lose the farm," she said, like she was telling me someone died. I was working at a manufacturing plant outside of Louisville. Entry level, nothing special. I was making enough to cover rent and groceries with a little left over. But when my mother said those words, something in me shifted. Not a decision exactly, more like a lock turning. I knew what I was going to do before I finished the phone call. I picked up a second shift, then a weekend rotation. I moved out of my apartment and into a room I rented from a coworker for $300 a month. I stopped eating out. I stopped buying anything that wasn't food or gas. I set up an automatic transfer on the first of every month, straight from my checking account to the mortgage company. $11,700 a month, every month, for 36 months, 3 years. That's what it took. 3 years of 6-day weeks and 14-hour shifts. 3 years of eating in my truck because I didn't have time to sit down. 3 years of watching my friends buy houses and take vacations while I poured every extra dollar into a farm I didn't even live on. My coworker Dave, the one who rented me the room, used to watch me come home at midnight and leave again at 5 in the morning. One night he stopped me in the hallway. "Garrett, you're going to kill yourself." I told him I was fine. He shook his head. "Nobody who eats peanut butter from the jar at midnight and sets 3 alarms before dawn is fine." He wasn't wrong, but I had 17 payments left, and every one of them was going to clear on time. I remember one Thanksgiving during that stretch. I drove to Colton after a 12-hour shift, still smelling like machine oil because I didn't have time to shower. My mother had set the table with the good china. Travis was already seated, clean shirt, hair combed, a beer in his hand. He was telling a story about a deer he almost hit on the county road. Everyone laughed. I sat down and nobody asked me how work was. For nobody mentioned the payment that had cleared 3 weeks earlier. My father said grace and thanked God for keeping the family together. I ate my turkey and drove back to Louisville the same night because I had a shift at 6 the next morning. On the drive back, I stopped at a gas station outside of Lexington. It was almost 11. The station was empty except for the clerk behind the counter. I bought a coffee and sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching the interstate traffic pass by. Trucks headed somewhere. Families coming home from holiday dinners. I pulled out my phone and looked at my bank balance. The mortgage payment had cleared 5 days ago. 21 left. I put the phone away, finished the coffee, and drove the rest of the way in silence. My brother Travis was 20 when I started making payments. When he still lived at the farm, he helped my father with the cattle when he felt like it and drove my mother to her doctor's appointments once in a while. He also slept until 10 most mornings and spent his weekends at the bar in town. But he was there, physically present. And in my family, being there counted for something. When I made the final payment, I drove to Colton on a Saturday morning. I had the satisfaction letter from the bank in an envelope on the passenger seat. My mother met me at the front door. She read the letter, pressed it against her chest, and cried so hard she had to sit down on the porch steps. My father came out, took the letter, read it twice, and then looked at me with wet eyes and said, "I don't know how to thank you for this." I said, "You don't have to." Travis was on the back porch when all this happened. When he came around the side of the house, saw our parents crying, and asked what was going on. My father handed him the letter. Travis read it, looked at me, said, "Good for you," then handed the letter back and walked toward the barn without another word. No handshake, no thank you. Just "good for you" in the back of his shirt disappearing around the corner. A year later, my father signed a deed transfer. He added my name to the property as co-owner. He said it was the least he could do. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he insisted. "This farm exists because of you," he said. "Your name belongs on it." I filed the deed, made a copy, put the original in my filing cabinet, second drawer. Family. Travis was in the kitchen when my father signed it. He didn't say anything, just stood in the doorway with a coffee mug in his hand, watching. And I noticed his grip on the mug was tight enough to whiten his knuckles. He took a sip, set it on the counter harder than necessary, and walked outside. That was 2018, and for a while everything seemed fine. The shift was slow, so slow I almost missed it. It started with language. Travis stopped saying "the farm" and started saying "my place." At first I thought it was just the way people talk when they live somewhere long enough, but then I noticed it wasn't casual. It was deliberate. He'd say it in front of cousins at Thanksgiving. He'd say it on the phone with neighbors. "Come by my place this weekend. I need to fix the fence out at my place." My mother never corrected him. My father never corrected him, and after a while, nobody else did either. Then the story changed. I started hearing things from relatives. My uncle called me one spring and said, "Travis told me you two worked it out, said you didn't want the farm anymore." I asked him what he was talking about. He went quiet. He said there was a conversation, that you told him to take care of it, that you were done with it. That conversation never happened. Not on the phone, not by text, not in person, not ever. But Travis had been telling that story for over a year, to uncles, cousins, neighbors, anyone who'd listen. He told it the same way every time, calm, confident, like he was reciting something he'd memorized. My brother has his career. He has his city life. He told me the farm was mine. I called Travis. He picked up on the third ring. I asked him directly, "Did you tell Uncle Ray I gave you the farm?" He paused. Then, "I didn't say it like that." "How did you say it?" "I said you weren't using it. That's not the same thing." "It's my name on the deed, Travis. And it's my boots on the ground, Garrett, every single day." That was the first time he said it out loud. The argument he'd been building in the background for years. "I work this land. You just paid for it." And in his mind, working it mattered more. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I hung up and walked to the filing cabinet, opened the second drawer, looked at the deed. My name was still on it. Same font, same ink. I closed the drawer and went back to my evening, but I started paying closer attention after that. I'm not the kind of person who keeps records because he expects a fight. I keep records because that's how my brain works. My truck has a folder in the glove box with the registration, insurance card, and a folded copy of the deed. My apartment has the filing cabinet with every bank transfer from 2014 to 2017, organized by month. I have a printed email from my mother, dated 2019, subject line, "From your mom," where she wrote, "This farm exists because of you. Your father and I will never forget what you gave up to keep this place alive." I didn't save that email as ammunition. I saved it because it made me feel something good during a stretch of years when nobody said it out loud. It was the only time she put it in writing. After the call with Travis, I checked things. Quietly. I confirmed the deed was still recorded correctly with the county. I verified the property taxes were up to date. They were. Because my automatic payment from 2017 had never been canceled. My bank account had been covering the property taxes for 9 years without me even noticing. I pulled the statements every April. My name, my account. Travis hadn't paid a single one. I didn't tell anyone what I found. I didn't confront Travis again. I just noted it, the way I note everything, filed it, moved on. But the picture had changed. Travis wasn't just talking like he owned the farm. He was living like he owned it, collecting the benefits, avoiding the costs, and building a narrative to cover the gap. The difference between us was simple. He had a story, I had a filing cabinet, and stories don't hold up when someone opens the drawer. 6 months before the lock, something happened that I didn't find out about until much later. My father walked into the county recorder's office with a quitclaim deed. The document would have transferred the property solely to Travis, removing my name entirely. He brought it in on a Tuesday afternoon, signed and ready to file. The clerk looked at it, looked at the existing deed on record, and told my father it couldn't be processed. The property had 2 owners. Both signatures were required for a transfer. My father's was on the document. Mine wasn't. He left without saying a word to me. He drove home and told Travis it didn't work. I only learned about this when my lawyer pulled the full title history weeks later. There it was in the county's records. An attempted filing, rejected, dated 6 months before Travis changed the locks. My father's name on the attempt. My name nowhere on the document. They tried to erase me with paperwork first. The locks were plan B. Now let me tell you about the phone call. It was a Monday evening. I called my mother to say I was thinking about driving down that Saturday. I hadn't been to the farm in a few months. I wanted to check on the property, maybe walk the fence line, see how the place looked. My mother said, "That sounds nice." She told me Travis had been fixing up the barn. She said the house looked good. Normal conversation. Nothing that raised a flag. I called Travis next. He picked up. I told him I was coming Saturday. "Sure," he said. His voice was steady. "Sounds good." On Tuesday morning, a locksmith's van pulled into the driveway of my family's farm. New deadbolts on the front door, the back door, the barn, and the equipment shed. Every entry point. Travis paid cash. He heard I was coming, and he built a barricade. Then Wednesday, my mother's call, the warning. "Don't come this weekend." The low voice, the careful words, and one sentence that didn't register fully until later. She said, "I told him not to do it that way. Not I can't believe he did it. Not I tried to stop him." She told him not to do it that way. She had input on the method. She disagreed with the execution, not the plan. She was in the room when this was decided. She wasn't warning me out of loyalty. She was managing the timing. I drove down on Saturday anyway. I left Louisville at noon, didn't pack a bag, didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just got in the truck, put the key in the ignition, and started driving south. The cab smelled like coffee and dust. The glove box rattled over every bump in the road, the way it always did, the deed shifting against the insurance card inside. The road to Colton is straight and flat for the last 40 miles. Soybean fields on both sides, broken up by the occasional grain elevator and a church steeple in the distance. I'd driven that road hundreds of times. In the early years, it felt like coming home. Then it felt like obligation. Now it felt like something else entirely, like approaching a place that used to belong to you and finding out whether it still did. The radio was off. The windows were up. I passed the gas station outside of Lexington, where I used to stop during those 3 years of mortgage payments. I passed the exit for the diner where my mother took me for pancakes the morning after my high school graduation. I passed all of it without slowing down. I wasn't going home. I was going to see what my family had done with the home I paid for. I pulled into the driveway at 4:15. Same gravel, same crooked mailbox my father never fixed. The post leaning at the same angle it had leaned since I was 12. Same oak tree I used to climb as a kid. The lowest branch worn smooth where my hands used to grip it. Travis's truck was parked by the barn. A pair of muddy boots sat on the porch steps. Everything looked the same until I reached the front door. New lock, brass. Still had the sticker from the hardware store on it. The adhesive was so fresh the corner was starting to peel by itself. I stood there looking at it. A $14 deadbolt on a $420,000 door. I put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. I tried it again, slower, like maybe the angle was wrong. It wasn't the angle. I knocked. Footsteps inside, heavy, deliberate, each taking their time. Travis opened the door about 6 inches, not enough to let me in. Enough to let me see he'd rearranged the living room furniture and hung a new clock on the wall above the fireplace. "What are you doing here?" he said. "I told you I was coming." "Yeah, well," he shifted his weight, filling the gap in the doorway with his shoulder. "Things changed." "Changed how, Travis?" He looked at me the way you look at someone standing on your porch trying to sell you something you don't want. "This is my home, Garrett. It's been my home for 9 years. I fixed the fences. I replaced the water heater. I kept the cattle fed. I drove Mom to every single appointment while you sat in Louisville cashing your paychecks and pretending you still belonged here. I paid for this house. You sent money." He said it like it was a lesser thing, a distant thing, like a wire transfer, and a decade of sweat existed on completely different moral levels. I put in the work, day after day. I was here every morning, every winter, every time something broke. You weren't. My name is on the deed. Your name is on a piece of paper. My life is in these walls. He straightened up. "You're not welcome on family land. Not anymore." I looked at him. His jaw was set. His hand was flat against the doorframe. Fingers spread, like he was holding the house in place. He believed every word he was saying. That was the part that landed hardest. He wasn't performing. He wasn't bluffing. He had genuinely convinced himself that 3 years of my life, $420,000, every sacrifice I made between 23 and 27 amounted to sending money. A bird was singing somewhere near the barn. The brass lock gleamed behind his shoulder. The hardware store sticker was curling at the edge. And something in my chest settled. Not anger, not grief. Something mechanical, like a gear clicking into position after years of floating loose. I nodded. Travis blinked. He'd prepared for a fight. He'd rehearsed this moment, probably practiced the speech in front of the bathroom mirror. He was ready for shouting, for threats, for me to beg or bargain or make a scene on the porch he didn't pay for. He was not ready for a nod. "Okay," I said. I turned around, walked to my truck, opened the door, got in, started the engine. And in the rearview mirror, I saw Travis still standing in the doorway, one hand on the frame, watching me pull away. His mouth was slightly open, like he was waiting for the second half of a conversation that wasn't coming. He thought he won. I drove to the end of the driveway, stopped the truck where the gravel met the county road, opened the glove box. The deed was right where I always kept it, folded twice, tucked behind the insurance card. I unfolded it and looked at my name, ran my thumb over the ink. Then I picked up my phone. I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line. "This is Garrett Whitfield," I said. "I'm the recorded co-owner of the property at 1140 County Road 7, outside of Colton. Someone has changed the locks and is denying me entry. I'd like to request a civil standby while I access my own property." The dispatcher asked me to hold. I heard typing. A pause, then, Mr. Whitfield, I'm showing you as co-owner on the deed of record. I'm dispatching a deputy to that address. Can you be there in 20 minutes? I'm already in the driveway. The cruiser pulled in 17 minutes later. I watched it come up the driveway from my truck, the tires crunching the same gravel I'd been crunching my whole life. A deputy in his 40s stepped out, adjusted his belt, and put his hat on. Name tag said Holt. He looked at the house, then at me, then back at the house. He walked toward the porch with the kind of unhurried walk that comes from doing this sort of thing more than once. Travis was still standing in the doorway. He'd widened it a few inches since I left, like he was trying to look relaxed. Megan had appeared behind him in the hallway, arms crossed, watching through the screen with her phone in her hand. Deputy Holt stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "Sir, are you Travis Whitfield?" "Yeah. What's this about?" "I've confirmed with county records that Garrett Whitfield is a legal co-owner of this property. He has the right to access it. I need you to step aside and allow entry." Travis's face went through 3 changes in about 2 seconds. Confusion, anger, something that looked like a man doing math he didn't want to do. His hand tightened on the doorframe. "This is my house," he said. "I live here. I've been here every single day for 9 years." "That may be, sir. But the recorded property owner is requesting access, and he's within his legal right. I'm here to make sure this stays civil." Travis looked past the deputy at me. I was standing by my truck, hands in my jacket pockets. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The deputy was saying it for me. "This is ridiculous," Travis said. His voice was louder now. Megan put her hand on his shoulder from behind. He shrugged it off. "He doesn't even live here. He shows up maybe twice a year and acts like he owns the place." "He does own the place, sir." Deputy Holt's voice was flat, patient, the voice of a man who had explained property law on someone's porch before and would do it again next Tuesday. "Ownership and residency are 2 different things. You need to let him in." Travis looked at the deputy, looked at me, looked at the brass deadbolt he'd paid cash for 3 days ago. Then he stepped aside, slowly. Sato, like every inch was a concession he wanted the whole county to witness. Megan turned and disappeared down the hallway. I heard a bedroom door close. I walked through the front door of a house I'd paid $420,000 to keep in my family and heard the floorboards creak under my feet, the same way they always had. Travis stood in the kitchen with his back to me, both hands flat on the counter, staring out the window. He didn't say a word while I walked through every room. I didn't stay long. I noted the condition, checked the walls, the windows, the plumbing. Then I walked back out, thanked Deputy Holt, got in my truck, and drove straight to a property attorney's office in the next town over. By Monday morning, my lawyer had filed a formal ownership dispute with the county. The property tax records became part of the filing. It was 9 years of payments, everyone from my bank account. Travis's name appeared nowhere in the financial history of the property he claimed to own. The utility accounts were still in my name too, something I'd nearly forgotten about. Travis had been living in a house where even the electric bill belonged to someone else. The phone call started that evening. My mother called first. "Garrett, what are you doing?" "Protecting my property." "It's not just your property. It's the family home. It's where your father built his life. And I'm the reason it still exists." "Why are you being like this? Your brother made a mistake with the locks, but he's been taking care of that place for years. Doesn't that count for something?" "Does $420,000 count for something, Mom?" "We never asked you to do that." Her voice cracked. You chose to pay off that mortgage. Nobody forced you. You emailed me in 2019 and said, 'This farm exists because of you.' Those are your words. I printed that email. It's in my filing cabinet right now. Would you like me to read it to you?" Silence. Long, hollow silence. The kind that happens when someone realizes the thing they said can't be unsaid. "How did you know about the quitclaim?" she whispered. "My lawyer pulled the title history. Records don't disappear just because you don't talk about them." She started crying. I let her. I didn't comfort her. I didn't apologize. I waited until she was done. "Please don't do this to our family," she said. "I didn't do anything to our family, Mom. I paid for our family. There's a difference." She hung up. My lawyer moved fast. Within 48 hours, when Travis received a certified letter at the farm, He had to sign for it at the door. The envelope contained a formal trespass notice informing him that he was occupying a property without legal claim and had 30 days to vacate or face court-ordered eviction. The return address was a law firm. The property address on the letter was the farm, his home, my name on the deed. Travis called me that night. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear something underneath it. The first crack. You're really doing this. I'm exercising my legal rights. Legal rights. He breathed hard through his nose. I've given 9 years of my life to this property, Garrett. 9 years of sweat. You don't get to sit in your apartment and erase that with a letter? You erased $420,000 and called it sending money. I think a letter is the least of your problems, Travis. I kept that farm alive. I was there when the pipes burst in January. I was there when the barn flooded. Where were you? I was in Louisville working double shifts, so the bank wouldn't take the farm while you were sleeping until 10. He went quiet for a few seconds. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. Dad said he was going to handle this. Dad tried to file a quitclaim deed 6 months ago. The county rejected it because my signature wasn't on it. So here we are. Silence, then. This isn't over. Check your mailbox tomorrow morning. It might feel like it is. Over the next 2 weeks, my lawyer pulled every thread. The title report came back first. Buried in the records was a denied loan application from 8 months prior. Travis had walked into a credit union and tried to borrow $60,000, using the farm as collateral. The lender ran a standard title search, found my name as co-owner, and denied the application on the spot. Travis signed the denial acknowledgement and walked out. He never mentioned this to anyone in the family. He'd been quietly trying to leverage a property he didn't own. Then the barn. My lawyer contacted the neighboring farmer as part of the property review. The farmer was surprised to hear from a lawyer. He said he'd been renting the barn and east pasture from Travis for 14 months, $800 a month. Cash. They'd shake hands at the beginning of each month, and that was it. No lease, no paperwork. I had no idea he wasn't the owner, the neighbor said. He never said anything about a brother. And then came the listing. My cousin Dylan texted me on a Thursday afternoon. One image. I opened it and my jaw tightened. The farm listed on a real estate website. Professional photos of the living room, the kitchen, the barn with the pasture behind it. 4 bedrooms, 42 acres. $685,000. For sale by owner. Travis's phone number at the bottom. Megan's email address as the secondary contact. The listing had been active for 3 weeks. They weren't just living in my house. They were trying to sell it for $265,000 more than I paid to save it. My lawyer added everything to the eviction filing. The listing screenshots, the denied loan, the unauthorized rental, the rejected quitclaim, the tax records, my mother's email. Each document went into the case file the way each document had gone into my filing cabinet. Organized, dated, undeniable. Then came the part that mattered most. As part of the eviction proceeding, every person named on the deed had to provide a written statement. My father was one of them. He received a form with one question. Did your son Garrett Whitfield pay off the mortgage on this property in full? He sat at the kitchen table to fill it out. My mother stood behind him, her hand on the back of his chair. Travis was in the doorway, arms folded. My father picked up the pen, held it over the paper. His hand stayed there for what I'm told was a very long time. My mother's fingers tightened on the back of his chair. Travis shifted his weight in the doorway. Nobody spoke. He didn't look at my mother. He didn't look at Travis. And he wrote one word. Yes. Then his full signature underneath. Then he placed the pen down on the table, parallel to the edge of the form, like a man arranging something he wanted to be done touching. He pushed the paper to the center of the table and stared straight ahead at nothing in particular. His hands settled flat in front of him, palms down, like he was holding the table steady. My mother reached over him and picked up the form. She read it standing up. Her lips moved slightly, the way they do when she's processing something she wishes she hadn't seen. She set the form back down in the exact same spot, then stepped away from the table without a word. Travis unfolded his arms, looked at the form on the table, looked at our father. Then he turned and walked out of the kitchen. The screen door slapped shut behind him. Naranaya through the window, my mother watched him cross the yard toward the barn. She didn't call after him. She didn't sit down. She just stood there, one hand on the counter, the other pressed flat against her stomach, like something inside her was settling into a new position. 10 days after the trespass notice arrived, Megan was gone. No argument. No confrontation. She packed her car on a Tuesday morning while Travis was in town picking up feed. She moved methodically, the way people move when they have already made the decision and are just executing the logistics. Clothes first, bathroom second, the jewelry box from the dresser, a framed photo of her own family that had been sitting on the bookshelf since she moved in. She left everything that belonged to the farm. She only took what was hers. By the time Travis got back, the closet was half empty and her side of the bathroom counter was cleared off. Her phone went straight to voicemail. He called 7 times that first day, 11 the second. When she finally picked up, she said one sentence, "I'm not going down with you over a house you don't own." Then she hung up. Travis called back. The number was already blocked. The town moved slower, but just as completely. Travis had built his whole identity around that farm. He sat on the county agricultural board. He sponsored a little league team with the Whitfield name stitched across the jerseys. People at the feed store called him by his last name and shook his hand when he walked in. The postmaster knew which mailbox was his without checking the number. He was the Whitfield boy who stayed, and for 9 years nobody questioned it. When the eviction filing became public record, the recalculation was quiet and thorough. The agricultural board sent an email asking him to step down until things are resolved. The feed store owner, who had extended Travis a $2,400 line of credit based on being a property owner, sent a certified letter requesting immediate payment. The Little League coordinator called and said they'd found another sponsor. She was polite about it. She didn't mention the eviction directly. She didn't have to. Every handshake Travis had collected for 9 years was cashed against a reputation he'd borrowed from a deed he never held. The 30-day deadline came and went. Travis moved out on day 29. He loaded a rented trailer with whatever furniture he could fit and drove it off the property at dusk. I wasn't there. My lawyer confirmed the vacancy by phone with the county. A few days later, my phone rang. Travis. His voice was different, flattened out, no volume behind it, no argument left. He sounded like a man sitting in a room with thin walls and a mattress he didn't choose. "I don't have anywhere to go," he said. I listened, let the silence sit. "You had somewhere to go," I said. "You changed the locks on it." The line went quiet. Not the angry kind of quiet, the kind where someone hears something they can't argue with and doesn't have the energy to try. Then a click. And that was the last time my brother called me. 5 weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived at my apartment. My father's handwriting, shaky, 2 pages. It wasn't an apology. It was something closer to a confession written by a man who'd run out of ways to avoid the truth. He said he knew Travis was claiming the farm. He said he let it happen because saying no to the son standing in front of him every day was harder than being fair to the son 200 miles away. He said he told himself, "I didn't need the farm because I had my career, my income, my life in the city." He said the quitclaim deed was his idea, not Travis's. The last line read, "I thought choosing the easy path was the same as keeping the peace. It wasn't." I read the letter at my kitchen table, folded it twice, walked to the hallway, opened the filing cabinet, second drawer, family, dropped the letter on top of the deed, the bank transfers, the satisfaction letter, and my mother's email. Every document that told the story of what my family did and what I did about it stacked in one drawer. I closed it, heard the latch click. Same sound as always. Didn't write back. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, I drove to the farm. No lawyer, no sheriff, no family. Just me and the road and 40 miles of flat soybean fields stretching out on both sides like they'd been there since before anyone thought to name them. I pulled into the driveway. The gravel popped under the tires the same way it always had. The mailbox was still crooked. The oak tree still stood where it always stood, wider now, branches reaching over the driveway like they were trying to touch the roof. I parked, stepped out, pulled the new key from my pocket, the one my locksmith cut after the court order. The one that fit the new locks I had installed after Travis moved out. I walked to the front door, put the key in, turned it. It opened. The house was half empty. Travis had taken what he could carry. The couch was gone. The kitchen table was gone. The TV mount on the wall had 4 screw holes and a dust outline where the screen used to be. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed against the far wall, the only sound in the entire house. The counter had a ring mark where a coffee mug had sat too long without a coaster. Travis's coffee mug, the one he held while watching my father sign the deed. But the bones were the same. The hallway where my mother hung photos, some of the nail holes still visible where frames used to be. The kitchen where she made Sunday dinners, the tile cracked in the same spot near the stove that it had been cracked since 2003. The back door with the screen that always stuck no matter how many times you adjusted the hinges. I walked through every room, slowly. Not inspecting this time, just walking. In the hallway I stopped, ran my hand along the wall until I felt it. Pencil marks, faded but still there. GW, 4'1", 1996. My mother's handwriting. She'd measured my height that summer and written it on the wall in pencil because she said paint was for walls, but pencil was for memories. I opened the back door. The screen stuck, same as always. I pushed through it and stepped onto the porch. 42 acres spread out in front of me. The east pasture where the neighbor's cattle used to graze. The tree line along the creek. The barn faded red, leaning slightly to the left the way it had since I was old enough to notice. The sky was pale blue and wide open. The kind of sky that makes everything underneath it feel both small and permanent at the same time. I stood in the doorway, on hands at my sides. The morning air was cool and still and smelled like damp grass and soil. I thought about the 3 years of double shifts, the cold meals in my truck, the $420,000 I sent to a mortgage company so my parents wouldn't lose this view. I thought about Travis standing in this exact spot, looking at the same land, telling himself it was his because he was the one standing here. He was wrong about most things, but he was right about one. Being here matters. I was here now. I didn't call anyone. I didn't take a photo. I didn't plan what happens next. I just stood there, breathing, listening to the quiet, feeling the porch boards under my boots, solid and worn, holding the weight of one person who'd earned every inch of what they were standing on. The screen door was still open behind me. The house was still half empty. The filing cabinet was 200 miles away in a hallway closet with a drawer labeled family. None of that mattered right now. I was standing on my land, and it was quiet, and it was enough.